Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. We're on episodes 30 through 32 of Ace of the Diamond Act 2. I had wrote in my notes that the only filler episode, the only recap in this entire season was episode 29. And I was like, at the time, before I knew the content of this season, I was like, episode 29, that's a really weird place to have a recap. No, it makes perfect sense because we've just had the coming of Sawamura into his own as a potential ace candidate, and Furuya just kind of self-destructing a little bit. Not that Furuya's trying to. He can't help his shoulder being the way that it is. But I decided to watch episode 29 on my own. And I'm watching it through Crunchyroll. And occasionally I'll look down at the like and dislike meter. And usually it's like there's like 600 likes and like 2 people that were trolls and disliked it. But man, episode 29, I'm assuming everybody was watching it week to week. And when episode 29 came out, it must have really ruffled some feathers because that dislike to like ratio is really bad. I just noticed that. I was like, man, the shade. I get it. I absolutely hate filler episodes. I'm not a filler person, and recaps are the worst. I don't like recaps at all. I will probably never react to a recap and be like, The only one I kind of maybe did was Jujutsu Kaisen, and that was like a half recap. It had other stuff going on in it, but I'm not a recap person at all. So I was like, I'll watch that on my own time. So I was sitting there like eating dinner and watching it and being like, oh, okay, yep, rehashing the first 28 episodes of this season halfway through, right? Yeah, so we're going to watch episodes 30 through 32 instead. So gonna be a full, I'm sure the thumbnail will say episodes 29 to 32, but y'all will know, right? So this last set of episodes, I talked a lot about them, quite a bit, oh my gosh, but they were so good. They were so good. I absolutely loved them. There was so much going on in the last set of episodes and so much to talk about. I haven't gotten through all of the YouTube comments. There have been a couple things. Some people were talking about how Furuya has had a plan kind of set in place. I kind of focused a lot on that the last couple sets, and some people on the YouTube comments were like, well, Furuya has had a plan in place. He's just not followed it very well. I will agree with that. Furuya is not the best at following through with what is put forth from him. And we've seen Miyuki tell him over and over again, here's what I want. And Furuya just isn't quite as good at delivering that as Sawamura has been. But then again, Furuya isn't trying to really notice me senpai appease Miyuki like Sawamura is, but he kind of is too. So I joke, I kid. The other thing that was noted was I actually had to go to the Discord to ask about this, but a few people noted about like the slideshow quality of this season. And I know that Madhouse and IGN aren't working completely together on this season like they were with season 1, season 2. For the record, I'm fine with this season animation-wise. When I asked what the slideshow thing was, it was like, oh, well, instead of the animation motion, it's just pictures. And I'm like, oh, I honestly haven't noticed it. It's not distracting to me at all. We've seen these guys hit the ball enough that I'm like, okay, I get yeah, sure. Honestly, the character artwork and illustration doesn't look any different, so it's not noticeable to me. I love My Hero Academia, and I love Haikyuu to pieces, but the last seasons for both of those series, there was some questionable artwork, some questionable animation that was maybe outsourced, maybe rushed, and that was noticeable and distracting. And when it's distracting, I feel like commenting about it. But I haven't really commented about this season because I don't find it distracting. The artwork is still the same quality. The animation is still the same quality. If they just don't show us as many action shots, sure. That's what I'm going to reread the manga and catch up through the manga. So I'll get to see it all there, right? But it's fine. I hope that as much as I want season 4 like now, as much as I want that, I want them to take their time with it. And if we have to deal with having to wait an extra amount of time to get a quality season, I will do that. I will wait and be patient if the product is going to be quality. I would rather them take their time and make it as good as they can than to rush through it and it not meet up to the expectations that I would have as a viewer, either as an anime only or as a manga viewer, or manga reader. So do with that what you will. But yeah, I'm pretty excited for these episodes. We're halfway through Act 2. Not ready for that. So I don't like that at all. Kelsey on the Discord was like, we only have 8 weeks left of Ace of the Diamond Act 2, and I was like, stop. But luckily I am going to read the manga afterwards and catch up so that I can go crazy with you all each month. So that's fun, right? That's a fun time. But yeah, we've wasted enough time. Let's just dive. We wasted 5 minutes. Let's dive into this season. Episodes 30 through 32 and just see what happens now that we're at the halfway point, right? So we're going to start Ace of the Diamond Act 2, episodes 30 through 32 here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. What is this series? What is this? I took 2 whole sides and another page of notes. What? Oh, this second half has kicked off to a really good start. There was so much that happened in these 3 episodes. What the heck? Terajima, what are you? You're just like, hey, we've got 2 months to go before summer tournament starts, so let's just fly through this. I'm like, oh my god. So yeah, we've got 2 months and we're getting close to the end of May. So it's like, it's gonna be May. It's gonna be Mima and Miyuki. I can't tell you how excited I am for this invitational tournament because Miyuki's gonna meet up with Mima. And Mima and May and all of them are gonna be there. And Miyuki's creating this, what is this web that Miyuki is weaving? What a freaking troll. What a troll. He is weaving this web. I'm like, you are just playing Mima. You are playing him? What? Just talking with your ex, you know? Oh my god. This was an amazing set of episodes. Where do I even start? Just, I'm not going to throw them because I have lots of notes, but oh my god. So there's a lot of things. Here's the thing. I was trying to write down so many notes because so much was happening in these episodes, but my handwriting's awful because I couldn't write and stare at the screen fast enough. So if I have to like squint at some of these and take my time with them, I apologize ahead of time, but I was like, what is even happening? Like, I think I wrote the most notes about, well, no, I wrote a lot of notes about all of them, like a page and a half about all of them. So anyway, so we start out with Sato versus Naruto, and with Coach Chuzawa. He seems fun. So while they're doing this game, Furuya is practicing with Ocha, and they have all the tools and the toys set out. There was a scene in the earlier OP and either the OP or ED from the last half that showed Sawamura crouching down with Furuya next to those same training tools. So that's a nice little bit of foreshadowing, maybe. That's really interesting. But trying to get everything back in shape and getting his body like toned and worked to pitch again. But I like that we established that our pitcher for Naruto is kind of like, he's right-handed, does sliders like Nori. That's interesting. But what a tie back to the OVA. Like, for a split moment, I was like, are we going to recap the whole Kuramochi OVA in this episode? And we don't. We just spend like a solid 4 minutes recapping that OVA, which was my favorite. I think Kuramochi's OVA may be one of my favorites. I really like it a lot. It's one of my favorites from that first set that we watched. I like Kuramochi's quite a bit. But yeah, it's pretty much canon at this point. But I like that we tie that back. And man, what decisions we make, right? I'm so glad that Kuramochi was a delinquent and ended up coming to Sato. I really, really love that. But again, tying back, what I love most about Kuramochi is that he is a delinquent, but baseball is like his sanctuary. I did an awards night a few days ago at a high school, and I had to present some awards, and there was this kid there, and I've known this kid from doing college classes with him. And he's one of those kids that kind of reminded me a lot of Kuramochi. He's just kind of like, not a delinquent, but he's kind of like a kid that's kind of just in trouble a lot. And you just look at him and you're like, why are you making so much trouble for yourself? But baseball is one of the things that he's really adamant about. And he got a scholarship to a college for baseball. And all I could think about in that moment was I literally thought of Ace of the Diamond. And I was like, look at him, like baseball's his sanctuary. Like that's where he's really good at, and that gives him a home and a sense of purpose. And so yeah, this episode tying straight to that event, it was so cool. I love that with Kuramochi's character. It's awesome. But yeah, so we tie back to Miyuki looking at Zono, and Zono having that little heart-to-heart with Furuya at the end of episode 28, and Miyuki being like, that's what I'm missing what Zono has. And that's pretty rare. Like Miyuki Miyuki's such an interesting character because he presents himself as this trickster troll, as this gremlin, and there's a part of him that is the gremlin. Like, the whole thing with Mima is straight up trolling. The whole thing with Koshu and Sawamura being the most devilish of gremlins, we will talk about that, but there is an aspect of Miyuki that is a straight up troll. Like, he is a gremlin. He'll sit there and stir the tea and drink it all up, but then there's this aspect of him that's quite private and almost humble and awkward, doesn't know what to do socially. And so I feel like Miyuki is very self-aware of that. And so he's like, man, Zono can just come out and say what needs to be said in the moment. And Miyuki overthinks so much. Miyuki overthinks many things. And so he's like, why can't I be like that? Like, I overthink everything and I have to like critically analyze it. And Zono can just come out and say what needs to be said. And I need to like sit down and like map it all out, right? So I like that Miyuki recognizes and is self-aware that there's a reason Kuramochi and Zono are the vice captains. They can do, when there's a moment that Miyuki struggles, they're there to pick him up and to help out doing what he cannot. So I love that. The glove bump between, I don't know how I'm picking a thumbnail for this. There's so many shots. The little screen of Miyuki and Sawamura bumping gloves and just being like, you know what? This one pitch, this one number 11 number that we can't quite get, let's just start with it. Like, just so bold. Because they established that these groups of Naruto batters are southpaw killers. And so they're like, you know what? They're going to threaten us, so why not just come right back with something threatening that we're not even sure about? We don't even know what we're pitching. It's like, it's great. But I love that glove bump. The battery of Sawamura and Miyuki, it's chaos, but not like it's bold. Bold is the better term. It's not exactly chaos, but they're bold. They're bold and aggressive and just fiery. And I'm like, I love it so much. Okay, so even Koshu showing up with the tire, cheering them on, that was adorable. But cutting to Miyuki and Sawamura practicing the numbers and Sawamura flipping him off, I was like, that is so, like, y'all. And the bickering to the fact that Ochi left. I wish they'd shown us that. I wish they'd shown us Ochi just, like, turning around and walking away. Like, I can't. I feel if anybody's going to push Ochiai's buttons, it's Sawamura. Sawamura is going to push those buttons. I just feel like that's his specialty. And Ochiai's like, I can't deal with the sunshine. Can't do it. He's a toad. He can't be in the sun too much, right? But I like that Miyuki's communicating with Sawamura, being like, look, once we get these numbers down, if you have just a little bit more speed to it, you've got control. The fact that he said Sawamura has control, I'm like, yes. But he's like, you have control. You just need more speed to make it all gel together and come together and be good. It's like, once you get that, you're going to be pretty awesome. And so we have all that. The Naruto coach, he's like, oh, who's this pitcher that was hidden behind Furuya? That's the thing. Everybody's starting to notice Sawamura and realizing he's there and he's a good pitcher. Realizing what we've known all along. We as the audience watching have known that Sawamura was going to get to this point, or we hoped he would. And so everyone else is finally catching up and realizing that, yeah, no, Furuya's not the only great pitcher. There are others on the team that are really good. And Sawamura just being one of them. And I love how Haruno, the manager, she tells Ray, she's like, Sawamura has this ability to pull the team forward. Again, I think going into this season, into this second part of the Act 2, I definitely feel like Sawamura has more of the ace energy than Furuya at this point. Furuya is like picking up the pieces and rebuilding himself. Does that mean that Furuya could become the ace again? Yeah, I definitely think he could. But right now, Sawamura just has this ability to pull his team forward and like just string them to move past things that they're worried about and focus on the game. And so I feel like Haruno's kind of hinting at, yeah, Sawamura right now is in the place to be the ace. I think Sawamura is going to be the ace by the time we start summer. It's Furuya's thing to take it from him, but I don't know if he's going to get it done in time for summer to start. We'll see, I guess. And then I love that they're like, we have lots of good pitchers, and the manager instinct is like, yes, we have Kawakami. I'm so glad that his character has stayed so consistent throughout this entire series, that if there's anybody that is the Nori supporter, the captain of the Nori fan club, the Nori Fumi fan club, it is this manager. His love of Kawakami as a pitcher is so damn endearing. I love it. But Hikasa's back in. Hikasa's back in the lineup. I love Sawamura's thing of, I'm here. The team still needs me. That's the one thing about Sawamura that I love. And that's the one thing that kind of ties back to him being the ace again. And it's not that Furuya hasn't had this. Furuya has wanted to be on the mound to help his team, to lead his team to victory, right? But he's also been like, I just want to be on this mound more than anybody for as long as possible. And for Furuya, he couldn't see himself in any other role. And we'll talk about that, him and Yui, the idea of not seeing himself in any other position. But Sawamura, he's like, the team still needs me. Like, I'm here. Like, I'm here to help. It's a slight little difference in tone. Like, him and Furuya are both saying the same thing, but there's just like little variances in how they say it that are interesting. But yeah, Sawamura pitched until the 7th inning, and then Nori came in and pitched the 8th. It is nice. I'm glad that they don't make Sawamura at this point, because you almost feel bad for how good Sawamura is doing, because Sawamura's, had the shaft this whole series, and now he's finally getting in a groove and doing well, and I'm always on eggshells, because I'm like, okay, when's it going to turn off? When is he no longer going to be our main character? When is he no longer going to succeed? Like, I'm sitting here anticipating him to fail, and so when we get to see him do well, it's like, oh, this is different. But I like that they're not making him OP, like pitching 9 innings every game. I'm glad that they do sub him out, and that Terajima's not making him that OP. Like, let's be realistic. And so Nori coming in. But damn it, Miyuki gives him an actual genuine compliment. He tells him what he needs to improve. He's like, okay, we need to work on the numbers. We need to do this and that, but you were doing really good at this and this. And Sawamura thinks he's just teasing him. And Miyuki's like, no, I'm giving you a genuine compliment. Like, Sawamura, recognize that the man is acknowledging you. Please. Like, Miyuki just needs to just come out and say, I'm acknowledging you at some point. Because Sawamura getting flustered, and like, he's acting like somebody around his crush getting flustered, that he's like, oh, you're actually complimenting Senpai? And Miyuki's like, yes, I am. It's so freaking frustrating, right? But I likened in the reaction Nori to a character in Haikyuu, Sugawara. I feel like Nori is very much like Sugawara from Haikyuu. And if you've not watched Haikyuu, in that series it's volleyball, and you have your setters, which are kind of like, it's weird. They're more like catchers than the pitchers, actually. They're more like the catchers. But if you were to liken and compare baseball to volleyball. But Sugawara is a third year that you have a first year come over and kind of takes the starting position from Sugawara. And Sugawara kind of falls back and becomes this support character that does come in and make plays, and plays for rounds or sets instead of innings, kind of like what Nori does, but becomes this kind of like mentor and leader and figure of the other setters and cross-nose deals, they don't have a lot of setters. So it's literally Kageyama and Sugawara. But he becomes like a mentor figure. And I feel like Nori's kind of fallen into that position. He's like a mentor figure. He's the head of the pitchers. And I just think their characters are very, very similar, which is interesting. But yeah, Naruto lost 7-1. And then Kaneda and Ona. Kaneda and Ono come in the second game. Asari versus Sato. Kaneda does fork balls. Reminds me a lot of Tamba, because Tamba did fork balls, right? I'm pretty sure he did. And it's 3-3, and they bring in Tojo. He gets to pitch. I love that. Tojo is kind of Tojo, I feel like, is the middle ground between Sawamura and Koshu, and where Sawamura and Koshu are at this point, and where Furuya and Yui are. And I feel like Tojo's smack dab in the middle, because you have, especially Koshu more so than Sawamura. Sawamura is used to sitting out and not starting the games, right? Sawamura has been the relief pitcher for a while, and he's been pretty comfortable with it, and came to accept it, but still worked to try to become that ace starter, person on the team. Whereas Koshu, we'll talk about Koshu, but he's just like, nope, catcher or nothing. It's like, oh. So you have that end of the spectrum, more so Koshu than Sawamura. And then you have this other end, we'll talk about Furuya and Yui kind of dealing with like, okay, do we accept whatever position we're given? Do we fight for the position that we want? What do we do? And right now they seem to be accepting what they're getting. Koshu is non-compromising. Like, this is my creed. I'm not going to play until I do this and get X, Y, and Z. And then Tojo's kind of in the middle. Tojo is like, he has been playing the positions he's been given, but he's also been actively like his own personal thing being like, no, I'm going to be a pitcher and I'm going to keep working to be a pitcher. And like Koshu, he's been doing things to help further that, like pitching in the bullpen, like pitching in the practice pens, doing all those pitches, where Kachioka has clearly been watching him and observing, being like, okay, you can pitch, you can handle this. And so I feel like Tojo's that nice middle ground between where Koshu's at and where Yui's at, and Furuya right now. And so he's kind of like that middle ground. It's interesting, but I'm so glad he gets to pitch in these games, doing sliders and curveballs. I love that Yohei and Kanemaru are like his biggest fans because they went to school with him, so they're so proud of him. Kanemaru doing like the one to him, and he's like the one back. It's so weird. There's a part of me that wants to ship Kanemaru and Tojo so bad, but then there's another part of me that's like, no, they are the ultimate bromance. They are like the childhood friend trope turned into a bromance. I don't quite ship Tojo and Kanemaru, honestly. I kind of ship Kanemaru with one of the managers, but I do think that they're like bro TP. Bro TP for sure. Like, just like Rio and Kuramochi are bro TP, and Miyuki and Kuramochi have kind of become a bro TP. Yeah, Kanemaru and Tojo, definitely a bro TP. I love them a lot. And then Kanemaru like getting all fired up from Tojo and hitting that home run. It was great. And I loved seeing at the end of the episode from the dugout, you see Furuya being like, yeah. Furuya was great in this set of episodes. Furuya, I was a little worried about him in the last set. To be honest, the last like 6 episodes, I've been worried about Furuya. I don't want him to self-implode. I want him to be at his best so that when Sawamura becomes the ace, it's facing Furuya at his best. But I don't want Furuya to self-implode. I like Furuya. And so I want him to get better and to figure out all these things that he starts to figure out in these set of episodes. So seeing him in this set is such a breath of fresh air compared to like the last 6 episodes. Furuya is like turning it around in a positive way. I'm happy for him. Him and Sawamura's rivalry is healthy. I like it. So I'm happy for him. And we have, at the end of episode 30, 55 days until the summer tournament, which it was May 10th when we started this. And it was May 10th when it started. So 55 days. And when we end this, it is May 18th. I think the 18th is when we end, right? 19th? Yeah, May 19th. So that was a solid 9 days later. So now there's like 45 days left until the summer tournament. By the end of this set, there's 45 days left. Woot. So then we have episode 31. Episode 31, where we have Mamiya versus Sato, and Nori starts. And the whole, I love Sawamura out in the outfield going, I've got it. It's good to know Sawamura's voice actor can speak English and do it really well. And I love that Miyuki's like, I hate these MLB style all call outs. I hate them. I'm like, oh, Miyuki. Now that's funny because they established that there are going to be American teams that are at this invitational training camp. So is this like a foreshadowing that Miyuki's not going to get along with the American players because he was getting on to Sawamura for doing these MLB call-outs. And he's like, grumble. So I'm wondering if Miyuki's going to grumble against the Americans if they're doing the MLB style call-outs. That would be interesting. But yeah, Sawamura playing left field. That's an interesting... There's a difference there too between Sawamura and Furuya, because you have Sawamura and Furuya in these episodes being placed in positions on the field that they're not used to, and the way that the team reacts to them not being used to it is very interesting, because you have Sawamura who's been charged with playing out in left field, which he's not used to, and he says, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And then, like, when he catches the pop fly and stuff, and he's like, I got it. He's gung-ho. He's excited. He's like, okay, I'm going to go out here and do the best I can and cheer from back here. That's just me. I'm a freaking ray of sunshine. That's just all the Taurus energy flowing from me. And so he does fine. He does great. And the team doesn't seem to be bothered by the fact that he's in the left field. They're like, okay, sure. Sawamura's just as annoying out here as he is in the dugout. Fine. But with Furuya... And we'll talk more about that when we get to that episode. But with Furuya, he's put over in the infield and he doesn't like it because he knows he's not good there. And he's kind of stressed and more like withdrawn about it. And the team notices and acts and adjusts because of that. So like when Yohei's pitching to Koshu, they intentionally pitch to not go towards Furuya because they're afraid that he'll freak out or make a mistake and it'll like hurt his confidence even more. So that's really interesting to see the difference of how Sawamura and Furuya both take on these positions they're not used to. And Sawamura, because he's Sawamura, like just instantly is like, let's do this, let's go, I'm gonna do my best no matter what. And Furuya's more timid about it because he's like, oh, this is outside my comfort zone. This is different. I don't know how I feel about this. And so he's got to warm up to it, right? So that's so interesting. I think that that's going to have a decision. That's going to play a decision on whether Kataoka makes Furuya or Sawamura the ace. I think that that's going to lead more into Sawamura's favor because Sawamura is like, I can take on any position. Just throw it at me and I'll do it. And a lot of this episode is Yui and Furuya kind of coming to terms with, okay, what do we do if we're not playing the position that we thought we were? Which was Tojo's dilemma, right? And Tojo rose above it and worked his way back up to playing the position he wanted to. But he had to settle for a long time, like a year and a half, playing a position he didn't originally intend. So that's interesting. But in the 8th inning, Sawamura starts out a little bit rusty. It kind of reminded that I feel like when Sawamura is used as a relief pitcher, it maybe isn't as effective as him starting out. Kind of like Nori has found that he likes starting too, so that's interesting. But then he ends up, after a few rounds, the numbers being rusty, he ends up finding a groove again. And Miyuki just has a great game. I feel like Mima is hinting at the end of episode 32 that he's like, Mei and Kosei are planning to get drafted. You could get drafted. Like they're forming like a little elitist clique of the draft candidates, right? And Miyuki's just trolling them all. I'm just like, oh my God. I am so excited for this training camp. I'm so excited. I can't wait for it. But yeah, Miyuki's having a great game. They win 11-2, but say that there's still work to be done. I like that Miyuki's getting on Sawamura. He's like, we still got to practice these numbers. We still got to do these things. And then we have Kawashima and Ono playing Kameda, playing them. Masashi finally gets a home run. Yes, our boy Masashi has struggled so far, and he finally gets a run. But Yui gets 4 runs. Which is interesting because that opens up the whole idea. I've talked in previous episodes about Furuya possibly being a batter and being cleanup because he seems to have a knack for it. He's good. I mean, Sawamura's getting better at batting, which is great, but Furuya has like a natural talent for it. And so I like the idea of Yui and Furuya possibly becoming cleanup members. Like once Ono's gone, once Ono and Miyuki are gone, Haruichi's great. And Kuramochi, Ono, Shirasu, Miyuki, they're all going to be gone. So the other players are going to step up their game. And so Yui and Furuya being 2 of them, that's going to be really important, right? And so I like that Yui's like, Kataoka says, can you play a position that's not what you normally play? And Yui's like, I'll do it to help the team. It's like, okay. And that's going to come back around here later. But we have Maeda versus Sato in the practice B game. And I like that Kataoka makes Furuya watch to try to like get his perspective expanded upon, even though Ochiai notes that he's still commenting and thinking like a pitcher, right? Because he asks what Furuya's opinions of Koshu and Sato are. And he's like, I don't want to pitch to them because they'll make me frustrated. And it's like, which means they're a good player, right? And he's like, okay. So he's telling Kataoka all about this after they win 7-11. And Furuya, Kataoka wants Furuya to have the heart to be able to know all these different positions and perspectives about baseball. And we'll talk more about that later in episode 32. But Koshu's still mysterious. I love the fact that in the classroom, all these girls are like, they're all like in a corner being like, he's so hot. We talked to him, but he's so awkward and intimidating. He just has this white wolf energy emitting from him at all times. And Annie, little manager girl Annie, she took the scorebook from the third year manager being like, oh, can I use the scorebook? And she gave it to Koshu because he wanted to study it. And the moment he started like going out, like talking about all the different plays, it's like, you've been studying Sawamura and Miyuki's plays, Koshu. He's trying to get up there to take Miyuki's spot. And so we cut to Yui and Furuya practicing with their batting, and that'll all tie back around here later. And then Sawamura, we finally get him running with Koshu in the tire, like in the OP. That's my favorite part of the OP so far, is Koshu like looking around, Sawamura being like having this high intense energy. And I love that Koshu's like, oh my god, and Sawamura's like, come on boys, we can run, you guys can get as trained up as me. And Asada's just dead. Asada being like, trying one tire showed promise. Trying the tire showed promise. Oh my god. I died. I love it. So May 13th, Kachioka practicing with Furuya putting Furuya in the infield, which is good. He wants Furuya to get some more positions down. Sawamura, I loved Sawamura and Yui's training regimen for pitching. That was so freaking cool. They would do 20 pitches, then they'd rest. They'd do 20 pitches, sprints, and then rest, and then more. Like that variance. And it's really cool how he explains it, because he's like, this is mirroring what would happen in a game. You wouldn't pitch 100 pitches in a row, right? You do 100, you'd rest in the dugout, then you'd play outfield maybe, sprint, pitch some more. It's just to get your body to memorize that routine, right? And that's really cool. But I'm going to be honest, okay? Here's the deal. I gave Furuya a very hard time back when he would not pitch to Yui because he just wanted to practice with Miyuki. I gave Furuya a hard time. So it would only be fair if I do call our Sunshine Boy out and say I did feel really bad when Yui's like, oh, let's practice the numbers. And Sawamura's like, I want to practice those with Miyuki. I was like, oh no, I feel bad for Yui as a catcher. Yui just wants to be a catcher. And he's gotten to practice with Furuya and he's gotten to practice with Sawamura, but I feel like Yui feels as if he's not good enough for Furuya and Sawamura. And I know that's not true. He is good enough. But I feel like Yui in that moment was like, oh, am I not good enough as Miyuki? Like, really? You don't want to practice the numbers? So I will call Sawamura out on that. That was really sad. I was like, oh no, you can practice the numbers with him. Come on. But that's like something sacred between him and Miyuki. I'm like, Miyuki's going to graduate after this year. You're going to have to do the numbers with one of these guys. So who's it going to be? And then we get Koshu. And the whole thing where what a trip. Koshu, the balls on this wolf boy, the balls on him. Sawamura loves it. Sawamura's eating it up. He's just like popcorn being like, look at this kid. Reminds me of somebody. It's like, it's funny because Koshu is a lot like Sawamura, but he doesn't want to admit that he's a lot like Sawamura or doesn't realize it yet. And it's like, oh honey, this whole move in my notes, this was season 1 nostalgia. This was back to episode 1 of season 1 when it's the same thing when Sawamura was like, I'm going to be the ace and unless I'm pitching, I don't want to do it. And Koshu's like, no. But the big difference is that Sawamura, it was more of a promise to himself, I think, than anyone else. It was a promise to himself and maybe to Miyuki at the time. Whereas with Koshu, it is literally a promise to be good enough for Sawamura. I'm a huge Miyuki Sawamura shipper, but these episodes, they've really been like, and you know, with Miyuki like going behind Sawamura's back to talk to Mima. Joking. But these episodes have really helped my Koshu Sawamura ship quite a bit. But Koshu saying no. I really thought when Kachioka was like, you're going to catch, I was like, oh good, we're going to finally get to see. Koshu can't tell his coach no. Except it can. Koshu is a weird cross between Furuya and Sawamura because there's times where he's just so blunt and cold and sounds blunt and cold that it comes across like Furuya. But then there's like the whole telling Kachioka no. But then when he explains why he says no, it comes across like Sawamura and it's like, So he's saying that he has his promise. And the fact that Sawamura knows it's a promise and Koshu's like being over here being tsundere, like, it's not a promise. Like, and Kachioka, I'm amazed. He's like, okay, you're going to be, and because Koshu's like, I'm not going to catch for Sawamura unless I'm on the first string. And Kataoka's like, okay, you're going to be on the first string. And it goes back to Ochiai saying, Ochiai's like, yeah, I can't train these two. Sato and Koshu, I can't train them. They already know too much. He's like, I can't mold them to my will because they've already molded themselves. It's like, oh, thank God. Thank God, right? So I love that he's like, you should put them on the first string because they're going to improve the other first years that they're with. They're going to motivate the third years. You should do it. It would be a good power move. It'd be a good move for them. They're only going to get better from it. Just bump Seto and Koshu up to first string. And Kataoka's like, okay. And then Koshu just lays down the gauntlet. He's like, it's not good enough that I'm on first string now. I'm like, what more do you want, Koshu? He wants to be starting catcher. He wants to catch. He wants to be a starter. He's not going to let Sawamura throw to him, damn it, until he's a starting catcher. You know what's going to happen? They're going to get to like an important game and Kataoka's going to be like, okay, Okamura, you start. And Sawamura's like, we've never practiced before together. And it's going to be like, ah! It's going to be ridiculous. It's going to be ridiculous. But so then we have, it's this weird dynamic between Yui and Koshu. And Yui just in that moment being like, Yui was just wanting to be on the team, be on the first string, no matter what position. And Koshu's like, no, I'm not doing it unless it's on my terms. It's what I want. And it's not necessarily selfishness versus selflessness. That's not it. But there's something, it's mingled with pride. It's mingled with personal goals and personal pride because Yui and Koshu, it's the funniest thing, right? Because you have Yui, who's kind of a prodigy, a really hardworking kid who does his homework, takes his notes, is like a prodigy, and he's being held back and made to go through these other positions, kind of like Furuya, right? Kind of like Furuya. And then you have Koshu, Okamura, who's kind of like Sawamura, in that this is what he wants, this is his goal, and he's gonna keep doing whatever he can until he reaches that goal, but he doesn't want any shortcuts. He doesn't want to just get a pity spot on the start. He wants to have earned the place as catcher and being a starter in order to catch for Sawamura. So it's weird. Neither of them are wrong. I think Yui is right to say, I'll do whatever I can for the team. It's fine. If I have to play whatever position to get a spot on the team and work my way back into being a catcher, sure. There's nothing wrong with that. Yui is perfectly fine with that. Furuya is fine with that. But there's also nothing wrong with Koshu saying, no, these are my standards. This is how I am as a person, and I'm not going to lower them and just to get a spot. He's like, no, that's not how I roll. It'll tie back to what Kataoka talks about in episode 32 about we're all a team. We have the same goals, but we all have individual ways of meeting that team goal. And that's basically what it's getting at. It's kind of just prefaced here before we even get to episode 32. But I like it. I like Koshu. Neither Koshu nor Yui are wrong. They're just going about how they play in a different way, and their end goals are slightly different. So that's interesting, right? But Furuya catching and being a battering with Yui, that's great. And then just RomaniaBlack.exe just stopped functioning when we went to the room. First of all, Sawamura and Miyuki just hanging out by themselves in the room, and you give this to us off screen, Terajima? You don't give us anything else? How dare you, sir? The fact that, because Koshu's like, oh, did we have a meeting? And Sawamura's like, no, we're just hanging out spilling the tea. Boyfriend goals, right? And I'm like, how dare you? I imagine that just the moment this episode dropped and that scene dropped, like every AO3 fanfic writer was like cracking their knuckles like, all right, ready to go. Filling in the gaps. I'm like, did we just establish a love triangle in this moment? Did we just do that? Did we just establish a love triangle? Because there's been a lot of people with season 1 that they were like, oh, the Chris, Sawamura, Miyuki triangle. I'm like, fair. But no, the gauntlet gets thrown down in this moment because I just love Koshu being like, why are you here? Is it a meeting? Sawamura's like, no, we're just hanging out. I've just been telling Miyuki about your whole thing about not catching for me unless you're first string. I feel like Sawamura recognized that Koshu is roommates with Miyuki, and he's like, I'll go tell Miyuki about this. Maybe he'll have some advice. And the moment he started talking, Miyuki was like slowly getting his tea set out, being like, yes, Sawamura, tell me more, because he's going to make Koshu's life a living hell. But yeah, the teasing. And then Miyuki even points out, he's like, wow, Sawamura, him being so demanding of this catcher position reminds me a lot of somebody I knew back from, season 1. And Sawamura's like, we don't talk about past Sawamura. We're not going to talk about season 1 Sawamura, his embarrassing past. But Koshu is just like Miyuki in this moment. Koshu is like Miyuki and Sawamura. And that shows just how similar Sawamura and Miyuki might be too. But I love that Miyuki connects the dots and realizes, okay, Koshu's exactly like me. I wanted Chris Senpai's spot, and Koshu wants my spot. Okay. He's like, and Miyuki's kind of like, I respect that. I respect that you're trying to get the starting catcher spot for me. It's not going to work, but I respect it. Right? That little rivalry there. I love that there's that little rivalry sparking between Koshu and Miyuki, which is really sad because it's only going to be for another 2 months. And then after that, there won't be that rivalry because I'm pretty sure Koshu is like getting set up to be the starting catcher once Miyuki leaves. He's just got like a natural intuition and knack for it. I feel like Koshu is going to be the catcher that replaces Miyuki. And then obviously Yui will be there to be a catcher as well. But I feel like Koshu's getting set up to be the main one. And that leads us to Furuya and Yuki and Yui, Furuya and Yui having the batting practice together and then talking about, Yui's like, okay, Furuya, I respect you. How do you feel about playing these positions that are not what you signed up for? Like, you want to be pitcher, I want to be catcher. How do you feel about all this? And I like Furuya's response. He's honest with Yui. He's very genuine. I love Furuya in this moment. He's like, I hate the infield. He's like, because I suck at it. Right? It's so true. It's like, I did competitive speech and there were events that I was really good at and I loved those events, but there were times where I had to do other events that I didn't like. And I was always so intimidated and I hated those because I was like, I'm not good at these. And that's such a real feeling. If you have to do something in any competitive sport, if you have to play any position or do any event that you're not comfortable with, it does feel bad. And you hate it because you're like, I don't feel comfortable doing this. It's not me at my best, because you feel like you're letting yourself down. You feel like you're letting your team down. You're like, I know I can do better if you just let me go over here and do A, B, and C, but I'm stuck here doing D, and I feel like I'm doing a disservice to my team. Like, you can relate to Furuya in that moment. But I love Furuya's response. He's like, I'm in no position to complain. I love this. I love that he remembers back when he got the glove from the third year, and the third year's like, here, you're going to need this. Like, go. He's like, that guy hadn't, every right to complain because I was taking his spot. He's like, I have no right to complain. He's like, I'm a second year. I'm on the starting roster. Even with my injury, I'm taking someone's spot. So whatever position I play in, I can't complain about it because it's still helping the team. It's Furuya is learning what Kataoka wants him to learn about there being that one goal. The team has a goal and they all work towards that same goal. And it's just how each individual player does the best that they can to help reach that goal is what's important. And I like that Yui's like, okay, thanks. Yeah, like Yui's all about it. He's like, sure, great. He's like, if I can play, I'm keeping someone off the list. So if I can play, I'll do whatever I can and do it the best that I can. And I love that moment with Yui. Like, him and Yui bond over that. That's really, really good. And then we end the episode. We end the episode with May 15th is Sawamura's birthday. And May 17th is Kuramochi's. And so I loved Asada throwing like the little confetti, throwing the party like, yeah, birthday roomies. And I love that Sawamura, he's like, for a brief 2 days, Kuramochi and I are the same age. I'm like, ah! And I love the Kuramochi's like, argh. And then we cut to May 17th and Asada's like, oh my God, like trying to take a picture, and Kuramochi has him in a headlock. He's like, now, oh my God, Kuramochi is officially of age. He's 18. Sawamura is 17. Our boys have grown up. They're growing into men. It's so sad. It's so sad. And then episode 32. Maybe I took the most comments about episode 32. I might have taken the most notes with episode 32. But May 17th, so Kuramochi, we start the game off. It's a 3-2 game. And Furuya is the third baseman. And this is what I was talking about. Furuya, I wrote down in my notes, Furuya is very different from Raichi. Raichi is a third baseman. Raichi is unafraid of anything. He is fearless. It's one of the reasons I love Raichi. He's so simple, but he's fearless. He just dives headfirst into whatever and gives 130% of himself no matter what, and just does the best that he can. And that makes him reliable. And it relates a lot to Sawamura. Sawamura just says, okay, here's my position. I don't know it as well, but I'm going to dive into it and do the best that I can. Furuya is scared. Like, he, in that moment at the start of the episode, is just, he's scared. Like, he's like, every time a ball gets hit, he's like, is it going to come to me? Huh? Because he's afraid of making a mistake. He doesn't want to let his team down. And it's so relatable and sweet in that moment, but it's so opposite of Raichi. Like, Raichi's leaping for the ball, like, bring the ball here, let's go. Furuya, total opposite. It was really interesting. But Yohei's pitching, oh, kooky. I can't call him kooky because it sounds like the American, like the English cookie. Like, he's kooky. I like Yohei. Yohei's better. But yeah, the team, Koshu and Yohei, are avoiding pitching to Furuya because they're afraid he's going to make a mistake, and they don't want his confidence to waver. Koshu won me over in these episodes because he is such a tsundere, but his impressions of Sawamura and Miyuki are the funniest damn things I've ever seen. Like, he has this like purple toxic poisonous background around Miyuki. Miyuki's like, ha ha ha, like, you foolish catcher wannabe, and Koshu's like, I hate him. And then Sawamura in his mind is like, ah, ha, 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 ha. And he's like, I hate you. So it's just, oh my god, like, his impressions of them are ridiculous. But the shit-eating grins that Sawamura and Miyuki have when they're teasing Koshu, I'm like, you guys are the worst. Gremlins. Chaotic gremlins. I can't. And then Kariba. Little Kariba being a freaking saint and just helping Koshu out of his gear, being like, it's time to bat now, Koshu. You gotta help the team, like, snap out of it, you know? I always forget Kariba in this series, and I feel bad because it was pointed out a little while ago. They're like, Kariba and Kaneda, they've been in this series the whole time. And I was like, oh, damn it, no! But, yeah, I was like, whoops. So, yeah, I felt bad the last several sets of episodes because I always forget Kariba, and in this episode, he's a friggin' saint. I'm like, God, you're wonderful, and I'm sorry. Sorry for forgetting you. But, Ochiai notes that Koshu is always calm under pressure. And he's almost creeped out by it. He's like, he's always calm under pressure. I was like, oh, Ochiai. Oh, my dude. But then we have Sato versus Kume. And the number 11, I like that Yui's like, the number 11, the splitter. Yeah, like, it's getting better. And I love Sawamura's little blush face when he's like, nailed it. He's like, yes, did it. And Furuya watching. And that image of Furuya saying, what does the best pitcher in Japan look like? And he's looking at Sawamura. Even though I don't think Furuya will ever vocally express his respect for Sawamura, I could be wrong. I think that in that moment, I was like, yeah, Furuya respects Sawamura a lot. He's trying to catch up with Sawamura now. That's the crazy thing. It's such a reversal, right? But the thing of it is, that's how this rivalry's been. It's never really been Sawamura or Furuya was on top of the other. It's always been they've both been striving to get better at the same time. And they look at each other and think each other is better than them. And that spurs their rivalry forward. And it's such a great thing. I love it. But I went back right before starting this discussion to the midpoint of this episode 32 and noted that Katioka talking about the foundations of baseball. It's pitching, hitting, defending, and running. And you've got to build that foundation on all of them. You can't just do it. One doesn't cover it. And I feel like those are the essentials that Katioka and Ochi and them have wanted Furuya to understand. That, because Sawamura understands those principles. He's been on a team since middle school. He knows that. He just knows that he's best at pitching. So that's what he wants to pursue. Furuya, since he never really had a team in middle school, I think struggled to get that whole dynamic of it's these foundations. And I think that Furuya just saw that he could pitch well and was like, okay, this is where I need to be. I'll just worry about that. And what are these other things? And so now Katioka's like, no, you need to practice hitting. You need to be defending in the infield. You need to run. You need to get those foundations locked in there. And then if pitching is your best thing, it will naturally come out and will use you. Right? So I love that. I love it. The team has the same goal, but we're all individuals with different ways of meeting that same goal. I love it. I absolutely love it. It's such a great thing. And he's like, there are no such thing as lofty goals. Like, he's like, you just said you're going to be the best pitcher in Japan, but you didn't think what exactly goes into that. How do I get to that position? And so he's like, instead of just having these lofty goals, you need to have something solid, like solidify yourself, solidify these foundations, and the rest will come. It's basically the same thing he told Sawamura. He told Sawamura, he's like, you need to cover all the bases first. Walk before you can run. He's telling Furuya that now. He's like, okay, Furuya, I'm going to tell you the same thing that I told Sawamura, just a little bit more eloquently, because Sawamura had to beat it over the head with. But just, it's fun that Kataoka's telling him the exact same thing. So then we get all these different games. We have all this different stuff happening. The second half of this episode is insanity. It just is like, here's an assault of everything. I didn't have enough paper. I had to go to another sheet. But we had Yakushi versus Urashima. I love that they dominated like the first 4 innings, and then they put all their first years in. Like, it was such a... my mother coached basketball, and I played basketball for a year. And so, if you play basketball and your team's doing really well, and like the last 2 minutes of the game, you're like, well, we're winning by 90. Let's just let's bring in all the kids off the bench. Let the starters sit out. It's such like it's kind of a dick move. It is. There's just no way around it. And in basketball, you are limited to how many minutes players can play. So you do have to rotate around because there's a time constraint there. But it always feels like when you sub out the entire starter pack for the bench warmers, at that point, you always know that that's when it's like, well, the game's over, right? And it feels like Yakushi got a little ahead of themselves, and we're like, oh yeah, we're leading by 9 runs. Put all the first years in, and it becomes a disaster. It becomes a disaster because it's just like the first years in Haruichi, and that's just like too much chaos. Like, it was a nice wake-up call, I feel, for Yakushi to be like, oh, we got a ways to go. We're not ready for this. We're not ready for this at all. Because they end up tying 11-11. And then they lost in a draw. And I love that at first, Raizo's like, oh, Raichi's getting his energy from Mount Fuji. And then at the end, he's like, Mount Fuji, you betrayer! It's like, God, it's great. But it's a neat contrast to see how the first years of Yakushi are not great. They're going to have to build them from the ground up like Yakushi itself. Always a team of underdogs. Always a team of underdogs. How they pull it off somehow, but always a team of underdogs. Meanwhile, Ichidai Third has a really good set of first years. And I wanted to go back to who this undercut guy is that's playing with Kosei. Who is this guy? In sharp contrast to Yakushi, the first years perform well. I'm going back to this episode. And so our pitcher here, all the boys. I love Ichidai Third's coach. He is a freaking teddy bear. He's so endearing. I love him. He's like, I'm a Misa boy. Like, I love him. He may be in my top. He may be my, you know what? If I had a top 5 coaches right now, my top 5 coaches, obviously Kataoka's in there. Raizo's in there. Kunitomo's in there. But he's in there too. I think that our Ichidai Third coach, he's in there as well. And then 5th, we got top 4. And then 5th coach, throw Nita in there. He's not my favorite. Nita's like a love to loathe character. I don't like Nita. I'll only put Nita in the top 5, not because I like his coaching strategy, but because he's freaking boss and just plowed a whole field off snow, so his players could play. Nita's in there because he's a boss, but then the other 4 coaches I like a lot. There is the hot coach that I guess could be in there for the team that he's with, but I think that Ichidai Third's coach is probably my 4th favorite coach, and then my top 3 are Raizo, Kataoka, and Kunitomo. They're my top 3, I think, but he's really good. I like him a lot. But yeah, so we have this new guy that's a pitcher, a first-year pitcher, carrying the future of the team, and his name, if we'll get it, what is his name? Let's see on here. Tadashi Teruai. Tadashi is the first year pitcher he has like the undercut and all the hair slicked back. and is so serious. Oh my god. I freaking love his dynamic with Kosei. It's amazing. So, Kosei is actually a lot like Furuya in this episode because they established that Kosei is inconsistent. When he's not good, he's not great, but when he's good, he's like nearly untouchable. And that reminded me a lot of Furuya. I was like, okay, everybody's comparing Hongo to Furuya over here, but really, honestly, Kosei and Furuya may be the better comparison, right? But I just love that Kosei, in his own weird way, is trying to become friends with Tadashi, and Tadashi's like, are you making fun of me? And he's like, no. It's like, you're a built dude. You look like you're 27, but you could be a heel as a wrestler. It's like, which, if you don't know wrestling, the heel is the bad guy, right? Is the one that's the antagonist. And so, God, I love Kosei. He's really grown on me in this series. And just, there should be a spin-off series of just Kosei trying to make friends. And it's Kosei searching for the brand of weirdness that matches his. And I'm trying to think of the other player that would maybe be friends with him naturally. Sawamura was weird. He was too complicated for Sawamura. too much. And then this Tadashi guy thinks he's insulting him, which is not true. So, you know what? Maybe would Miyuki and Kosei be friends? They might. Miyuki would probably try to troll Kosei, and Kosei would probably be like, So I don't know. I don't know about that. That's interesting. And then we go to Inashiro. May 19th, Inashiro. May sitting out the game. And then Akamatsu is a demon. He's the devil. No, he is, because we had 3 6s. We had 3 6s in this game. He came in during the 6th inning. It had been 6 months. He came in during the 6th inning. That was strike 1, coming in with his red eyes and red hair, with that smile, that devilish smile. He came in the 6th inning. That was strike 1. And then May gets all flustered because he's like, wait a minute. I didn't get to be a starter in a game pitching until 6 months after this guy, right? 6 months later. And then he gets 6 outs in a row. I was like, Terajima, you're basically telling us that Akamatsu is the devil. Okay. And then I feel so bad. You know why? Because Asada had this really cool thing going where he was a really tall pitcher and he had the 12-6 pitch, and that was his thing. And I was like, cool, Asada's got a weapon. He can fight with it. And then this guy, Akamatsu, comes up and he's a really tall pitcher with a 12-6 pitch. It's like, here's the thing that's funny. The thing that's funny is if they ever do an Act 3, I know the manga's still in Act 2 right now, but if they ever did an Act 3 or did an epilogue where they showed us Act 3 scenes, things like that. I know there was just recently an anniversary and it's been 16 years of Ace of the Diamond, which is not crazy for mangakas. I mean, Oda has been writing One Piece for 30 years. So there's that, but for nearly 30 years. So 16 years is still a long time though. But what would be funny is you have Akamatsu, who Tomobe, who is the pitcher for Yakushi now, the first year pitcher, they have a rivalry going, right? And Yui knows Akamatsu, right? And Koshu and Sato know Akamatsu, right? But Asada doesn't know him. So it'd be funny if all these competitors from middle school that know Akamatsu know he's a demon and have been anticipating all of his moves. If we get a matchup between Asada and Akamatsu, the 2 freakishly tall pitchers with the 12-6 pitch, going at each other, that would make my day. Because they're totally different, right? I was comparing Yui to Akamatsu, being one's a cinnamon roll and one's not. Yui is a little churro. He's a little churro. He's not quite a cinnamon bun. Asada is a freaking cinnamon roll. And then you have Akamatsu, who is a hot packet of habanero fire hot sauce. And it's total opposites. But total opposite pitchers in terms of attitude, but with similar builds and similar pitching styles. With the exception though, a lot of you pointed out that Asada is a southpaw and Akamatsu is not. So that's their big difference. They're both freakishly tall. They both do 12-6 pitch, but Asada's a southpaw. Akamatsu's a righty. So interesting. But yeah, just a demon. We didn't even get to see him really pitch. They just tell us, and it's like, they're saving it. They're not going to show us yet. They're going to show us him pitching later, I'm sure. But I like that Zono, everybody's all freaking out about AKAMATSU, and then Zono's like, wait a minute. We're worried about this first year. We're forgetting about the king. We're forgetting about May. He didn't even play this game, and we know he's a threat. So he's like, Inashiro is going to be a team to beat. They're going to be a team to beat. They just are. And that's why Miyuki's like, the summer is what counts, right? These are just all games leading up to the summer, but the summer is where we have to make it matter. So then Furuya's going to come back and pitch for a second string game, which is going to be good. All right. Hakuryu took over Kosei's team. So Amamisa had a bad day. Amahisa, Kosei had a bad day, and Hakuryu faced them. Furuya's looking good. His pitches are doing well. Everything's going all right. Koshu catching for Furuya. He'll do that, but Sawamura, he's not there yet, right? And then they do this thing where they keep bringing up how Sawamura watches the Hakuryu game. And they say it's like a ritual, like a good luck ritual. But I don't think that's necessarily it. I don't think Sawamura is doing it for good luck. I think it's because the Hakuryu game is like where he's felt the most confident so far and where he's been the most consistently good. And so he's like, I want to savor this moment. I want to recreate this moment in every game. Like, I want to go back and know that I get to relive this moment over and over again. That's what I think. I think it's not so much a ritual as is Sawamura reminding himself, like, this is what we want. This is what we're going for, right? And while that's going on, Furuya is doing form practice with Ono and Yui, his awesome roommates, and they're making sure his form is right, doing the whole towel throw thing. So I like that both Furuya and Sawamura and Furuya are both doing things. They're both helping to make themselves the best that they can to keep that rivalry going, right? And it's so great. I love it. It's wonderful. So then we have May 21st with Inashiro versus Hakuryu. And honestly, Saito had a really good game against Hakuryu. A really good game. Because Hakuryu managed to get 3 hits on May. That's pretty huge. And I wonder if Sawamura is ever going to mention that, because they didn't get any hits off of Sawamura. Maybe 1? Maybe that's it. But I mean, if you're looking at plays, does that make did Sawamura pitch a better game than May against Hakuryu? Technically. But May did strike out Mima. He did strike out Mima. And then poor Itsuki. Itsuki goes to hug May and be like, we won the Kanto tournament. And May's like, save it for nationals. Don't embarrass me, Itsuki, by trying to hug me in center field. We haven't won nationals yet. And Itsuki may have a kink. He may be a little bit of a masochist, because he was like, okay. Oh my God. May's like, save it for when we win nationals. And Miyuki's just sitting there like, And Miyuki's like, I think I'm going to stir the pot. I think I'm just going to stir the pot. So he texts Mima about his ex being like, May's just hard to handle, isn't he? And it's like, oh my God. Miyuki. I can't wait for the summer tournament, because you know that Mima and Miyuki are going to meet up again. He's like, so how many schools have you... I'm just waiting for May to be standing within earshot and him being like, how many schools have drafted you now? Miyuki, it was 10. And Miyuki's like, oh, it's up to 20. And May's like, bullshit! Like, I'm just waiting for it. I'm waiting for it. But yeah, just riling old Mima up. Oh my gosh. I feel like Miyuki views Mima the same way he views Koshu, because Mima and Koshu are both like, have this tsundere vibe to them. I feel like Miyuki's like, oh, you two are going to be fun to play with, so let's do that. Like, I feel like he views Koshu and Mima the same way, which is fun. But then we have Mogami. I don't like him. I know a lot of people like him as a character. He's so slimy though. He reminds me a little bit of Ochi, just a wee bit. And he's funny, but I'm just like, you're lazy. And I'm like, nobody's caught on yet or have been pushing you. And it's funny because we need characters like that in this show. Not all of them are hardcore baseball junkies. But it's Sato, so I'm like, why are you here if you're not here to try? But I think Mogami's been overwhelmed. And our little mongoose boy's been overwhelmed. And he's like, he's not felt motivated. And so he thinks he's just going to tell Zono and Haruichi that he has a stomachache so he doesn't have to practice with them. But Haruichi, Rio could come in with a knife and stab you and like twist it. And Haruichi, that whole killing with kindness, he just comes in with the freaking scythe and just slices Megami down because he's like, oh yeah, you guys don't have to practice this. It's just that these third years are going to be gone too soon. I'm like, oh my God, Haruichi, what? What are you saying, hun? Stop twisting the knife. And that gets Megami to be like, but to Megami, he's like, oh, he wants to be friends with me. He recognizes my potential. I have to go practice now. And so he lets the guilt get to him, and then he ends up confessing the lie. And Haruichi's like, this will not do. And that was very Rio vibes. Like, this will not do. No. I feel like Haruichi would be scarier than Rio. Because Haruichi would, like, twist that knife. Rio's just going to stab you, but Haruichi's going to twist it. It's like, ugh. But then, yeah. And so then Mima texting Miyuki back because he's like, I love that Miyuki, what does he say? He teases him so hard in that scene. Like, what does he text him? I go to that scene. Yeah, he gets the text from Mima and it says to Soichiro Mima, congrats on second place. I love that. It's just, he didn't say play good. Miyuki could have said, hey, watched your game, great job. But it says, congrats on second place. Like, just get that little dig in there. And Mima saying, I'm not pleased in the least. Did you think I'd be happy? Like, and that's exactly, like, you just fed the troll. Why did you do that, Mima? Why did you do that? Because Miyuki gets, like, the biggest, like, gremlin troll smile on his face. Like, yes. I love it. And he's like, I'm more worried about your team. And he's like, Kosei Amahisa and Mei Narumiya are both draft candidates. Can your lineup really hit them? Oh, but I'm like, oh, Mima, you don't understand. Miyuki is a masochist. He loves a challenge. He loves when people are like, you can't do this. And he's like, oh, let me show you that we can. So I'm like, Mima, you've just fed the troll. You just did. Like, he gets that fire in his eyes. Oh, Miyuki gets that fire in his eyes. And then you know what we do, show? You know what we do? You know who we flash to? Sawamura watching the tape. It's like, what was Miyuki thinking of in that moment? Sawamura. And that's who we flash to. So, yeah. Miyuki likes a challenge. And these two pitchers that are draft candidates to go pro, Miyuki's like, we're not going to let that. When we beat them, it's going to be even more satisfying. Right? Oh, my God. Asada is really tall looking at him. And then Koshu. I love that Koshu is seeing Sawamura. And he's talking about gripping the ball, like watching the pitch and gripping like he wants to be pitching. And Koshu notices. And Asada's like, oh, is he watching that game again? But he can't wait till the game. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And it's that hunger. Oh man. So I've talked for an hour. But these last two sets of episodes have been so good. So good. They've been so good. And I've loved them so much. They've been amazing. And this whole season has been wonderful. But yeah, so these games were really great. And this whole set of episodes, the last two sets have been so good. And so now, yeah, I'm pretty excited to see what's going to happen next week. So, next week we're going to look at episodes 33, 34, and 35 of Ace of the Diamond, but I hope you all enjoyed this discussion and this reaction. I can't wait to talk to y'all in the comments down below about it, but yeah, in the meantime, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next week with more Ace of the Diamond Act 2. Bye.